Bethany McLean, class of 1992. An English and mathematics double major, she gained international prominence as the first journalist to question the financial dealings of Enron Corporation with her 2001 Fortune magazine article, "Is Enron Overpriced?" After the company's collapse, she collaborated with Peter Elkind to write The Smartest Guys in the Room, The Amazing Rise and Scandalous Fall of Enron, which was later made into an Academy Award-nominated documentary. She's also co-author with Joe Nocera of All the Devils Are Here, The Hidden History of the Financial Crisis, which is celebrated for both its rigorous bird's-eye view of the crisis and its gripping style. Formerly an editor-at-large and columnist for Fortune, McLean moved to Vanity Fair in 2008, where she serves as a contributing editor. At Vanity Fair and in her regular columns for Slate, she continues to examine the financial phenomena in reader-friendly articles. McLean returned to Williams to speak at the Fall Convocation in 2002 and at the opening of the inaugural Mathematics, Statistics, and Computer Science mini-conference in 2008. I was not invited to that for some reason, but thank you for being here.
So I wanted to pick up on two of the themes that I've heard my fellow people mention, which are the themes of failure and accidents in careers, which I feel like have very much defined where I am today. And I'll start by my entry to the wonderful place that is Williams. I'd love to say I'd always wanted to go to Williams in high school, but in truth, all I wanted to do was copy my older sister. And my older sister went to, please don't take my award away, Amherst. And she was not happy to have her younger sister follow her there, so I did the other thing and went and came to Williams. And I came here very determined to major in math. I'd always thought that I was really skilled at math, and math had frankly come very easily for me, as it did through my freshman year. But I met my stumbling block with a course called Advanced Algebra when I realized that I really actually wasn't very good at math. And I feel like looking back, this became a very defining part of my life. I gave a talk to the math department today entitled "Why It's Good to Be a Math Major Even If You're Not Good at Math." And the big lesson I took away from my math major was how to stick to something when you're not very good at it, how to start working when you don't know where to start, how to stare at something that makes absolutely no sense to you and figure out how to move forward anyway, and how to do the best job you can when there are people all around you who are much better at what they're doing than you are. I would sit in the Bronfman Library with 48-hour take-home exams, which you would think would be a beautiful thing. You could take your exam home with you, and the proofs would be 4 or 5 lines, and I wouldn't even be able to figure out how to start the proof, much less how to complete it. And all around me there would be the sounds of pencils furiously scratching, and I'd think I just wish I could scratch. I wish I had something to say. But this became a very defining thing for me later on. When I was going through my college career, I still sort of harbored illusions of going on to get a math graduate degree. But I worked in a great undergraduate program here called SMALL, which is one of the few programs in the country for undergraduate math research. And after I concluded that program, I realized I really didn't want to go to math graduate school. So I started my senior year with absolutely no clue what I was going to do, and with lovely parents who are here today, thank you very much, who gave me my Williams education, but told me that after college I was not getting a penny from them, nor was I ever moving home. So I went to the Office of Career Counseling and started applying for jobs. But if I lack skill as a math major, I lack even more skill when it comes to dealing with computers, and I could not get my cover letter to print out on one page. So I decided to hell with it and put my resume in everything that didn't require a cover letter. And that was how I ended up becoming an investment banker. The big Wall Street firms looked at my resume and saw a female math and English major and didn't realize that I was utterly ill-suited to the business of investment banking and hired me. And this turned out to be a good thing, as well as a really good use of the perseverance I'd learned as a math major, because there were plenty of times during my years at Goldman Sachs where I worked where I'd had no sleep the night before and I had to confront a problem and I didn't know how to do it, and there was no one around to ask, certainly no one around who wanted to be asked, and I had to figure it out. And I was grateful many times for the stamina that I'd learned through my math major to say, okay, this seems hopeless, but I will figure it out. And I survived those 3 years at Goldman, during which I realized that I'd really always wanted to be a journalist. And I'd love to say that I'd worked in journalism when I was in college or written for the Williams Record, but of course I'd done none of that. I just slowly came to see that the act of putting together stories by words, which is what had led me to my English major, was what I wanted to do. And because I worked at Goldman, it gave me an entree into business journalism by becoming a fact checker at Fortune. And that was an entree that I never would have had it not been for this accident of stumbling into an investment banking job after college. So I got to Fortune, and this was the 1990s, and everybody was writing glowing stories about dot-com CEOs who had made their billions. And I was very quickly disabused of the notion that I knew how to write, by my first attempts being absolutely torn to shreds, and I developed a reputation for not being a very good writer. So the only way I was going to get into the magazine was by tackling the things other people didn't want to do. And at that time, those were the kind of hardcore numbers-based stories. And I worked on a column called Companies to Watch, where I was supposed to pick every 2 weeks 3 stocks that were going to double or triple in value over the next couple of months. Now, you might think that sounds like a difficult task. It actually was not. There were no shortage of people out there who were willing to recommend stocks that were going to double or triple in value, whether they were company CEOs or analysts on Wall Street who were recommending the stocks, or portfolio managers whose mutual funds own the stock. They could spin great stories, and I'd take their great stories and put them in print, only to watch as the stocks of these companies promptly went off a cliff and went in exactly the opposite direction that I'd said they would. And I started to realize that there was probably a negative correlation between the story that a company could tell and the actual foundation of that company. And that was the birth of a very important skepticism that has come to dominate my career, where I look at the numbers underlying something and see if they add up and make sense, and if they jive with the story. That's the narrative that's running along the surface. And there are many times in my career today where I'm still faced with not knowing how I'm going to get started and what I'm going to do. One of the great things about being a magazine journalist is that every time you're writing about something, you know nothing, you don't know who to call. Most people you have to call don't want to talk to you. And you have to figure out how to get started. And I'm eternally grateful for having the stamina to not just throw my hands up in the air, which I do sometimes anyway, and say, oh my goodness, it's hopeless. And for figuring that there's a way to get started. And I have just a big thank you for the Williams community and for my family. My parents are here today. My husband, everybody has been introduced to my 2-year-old daughter. or she's at least introduced herself to everyone. I'm incredibly filled with admiration for your ability to cope with 6 great-grandchildren in a pool. I'm not even sure I can cope with 2 children out of a pool. But I'm really grateful to Williams for giving me the ability, for giving me first curiosity, and second the ability to fulfill that curiosity, because if there's been any kind of plan through my accidents and failure, it's been the driving force of my curiosity and my ability to get answers for the questions that I have. You have to first have the questions, and then you have to know how to get the answers. And that's been the thing that has driven me. Many times people say, well, what's your next big story going to be? How do you write the next big story? And I say, I don't know. When I wrote about Enron, all I knew was that I was interested in it. Something didn't seem to add up, and this was interesting. If you had told me at the time that I wrote about Enron that this was going to become a spectacular bankruptcy that became a defining moment in American business history, I would have said, really? I wasn't planning on writing a big story, and I think that's the way you have to operate, because I think the most honest thing you have is your own curiosity and the way your brain goes about getting the answers to the questions that you have. And I wanted to conclude on one note, which is that I've become kind of a critic of business. Many of the stories I write are basically business gone wrong. But I am such a critic of business because I am such a believer in the power of business to do good, to create jobs, to move our economy forward, and therefore to create a more stable society. And I think that's true all over the world. So another question I often get is, don't you want to cover something other than business? And I always say it's business that is the world we live in. And if there's one cry for the Williams community and for any students who may be here today, it's easy to think that the business world isn't worth understanding, that it's just about people making money, but it is very worth understanding, because it is the world we live in, and there are people who have taken the money they've made in the business world, like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and gone on to do just an enormous amount of good that is world-defining in a way that sitting in your attic trying to write the next great American novel may be and may not be. But my point is that you can do good in a lot of ways, and be open to the ways in which you can do good.